Chiro here for Umbra Games with a review of Zombie Vikings Ragnarok Edition, played on PlayStation 4. Zombie Vikings was developed by Zombie Games, the same developers that brought us 2013's delightfully quirky Stick It to the Man. While it may sound like the game is just trying to cash in on all the zombie craze over the last decade, it actually tells a pretty unique comedic story about Vikings raised from the dead by Odin to go and reclaim his remaining good eyeball stolen by Loki. This Ragnarok Edition is a physical copy, released in early 2016, published by Rising Star Games. Once again, sticking with my if an indie game is good enough to give physical prints, sign me up. Zombie Vikings gameplay is similar to the beat-em-ups of old, like Final Fight and Golden Axe, or more recently like Castle Crashers and Dragon's Crown. It has local multiplayer and online support for up to 4 players, and each person controls a unique Viking with his or her own special abilities. Abilities are set to the triangle button and attack a square. You can also hold square or triangle to do a signature attack. You can change characters between stages, which helps you find one that fits your playstyle best. The Ragnarok Edition includes the 4 story characters, as well as a zombie Ray Bjorn, which is a take on the protagonist from Stick It to the Man, and a few other zombies based on characters from indie games. In addition to choosing a character, you also choose a weapon and a runestone each level. New weapons and runestones are unlocked by completing stages and also the game's side quests, at most 1 per level. Really, I use the word side quest pretty loosely because usually it's just something within the screen like throwing an iced over imp into an alcoholic beverage. While in multiplayer, the quest reward from side quests given to you must be battled over, giving a free version to the victor, and the losers have to pay for it in gold from the select screen. Gold is dropped sometimes by enemies and can also be found by breaking the stage's barrels. Stages can be replayed at any time for more cash or to find the side quest if you missed it. Weapons don't function like upgrades, and instead are more a trade-off, and are honestly more negative than positive most of the time. And without being able to see any form of your character's stats, how do you know that a weapon that increases during every hit of the combo, up to a maximum of 270%, but gives you an initial damage of -5, is any good? I mean, how much damage do you start with? What percentage increase does the weapon give? Now, there were some that were fun, like the one that shoots fireworks, and I especially appreciated the Bikel May that caused explosions every time someone died, but we just as often find the weapon that worked and just go with it. The runestones function a little more solidly, often boosting your chosen character's ability, or providing health regeneration, or a meaningless double jump. In multiplayer, when you die, well, I mean, you're already undead. Instead, your head pops off, and you can vomit on enemies with your disembodied head until your teammates pick it up and put it back on your body. If all players undie again, you have to start at the last checkpoint, which actually comes quite frequently within a level. You can also pick up and throw your friends, although I'm not sure we really ever found much utility in this, and it was often a hindrance as you were trying to pick something else up for an objective and you grabbed your player instead. There is a multiplayer arena also, but I'll be honest, we didn't touch it. So I'm a big fan of this art style. Everything looks hand-painted, and the bosses and player characters are often very unique and pretty humorous looking. The writing, well, I have mixed feelings about. There are cutscenes between most stages, with the team often conversing on their next move. Obviously, not everyone has the same sense of humor, and for me there were a lot of jokes that fell flat, but there were a few where I laughed out loud. I think the funniest moments to me is passing a checkpoint or finishing a screen full of enemies, and some very rough Viking-sounding guys will scream out "checkpoint" or some guttural chant. And there occasionally will just be this singing, overexcited guy that melodically carries on afterwards. They even used a few different sound bites to change it up and keep it fresh, but I probably have an odd smattering in my sense of humor. There are a lot of pop culture references as well, and some that have really been done to death already, and there are also quite a few bodily part and function jokes as well. Honestly, the game just started to feel long. There are around 30 stages in the game, and while the sprites for the enemies changed, you are often still fighting the same AI for a small, medium, and large enemy that would just kind of behave the same. A few random enemies would pop up eventually here and there, and you may have to jump in the sky and knock them down or block the snowball thrown at you, but for the most part it just felt like you were just laying on the attack button the entire time. With no real character progression, the gameplay itself just gets kind of stale fairly early. Not to mention there were a few frame rate issues while we were playing. I looked up some preliminary reviews of the game when it was originally released digitally of people having bug and glitch issues, but I don't really recall experiencing any, so maybe they were able to tighten them up for this physical release. It is weird though, there are 2 things that come in barrels littered through stages. There's gold and the life replenishing brains. And I started to wonder if the developers were trolling us at times by placing the brains at the beginning of the stages, often before we'd even encountered an enemy, and they just had barrels full of gold before boss encounters at the end. I hope they were trolling because that's some pretty bad design. There are some large enemies that can put you in a chokehold where you can't move. Even with another player beating on them, there really didn't seem a way to make them release you. There wasn't much, if any, telegraph that this action was coming, so that ended up being pretty annoying. The throw mechanic was also difficult to deal with, as your launch projectiles seemed to go wherever they wanted, or were sometimes on auto path if there was something the game really wanted you to hit. With all those things said, I'm not sure overall if I'd truly recommend this game, unless you're just craving some more old school style beat 'em up, but I think there are better, more solid entries to satiate those urges. Keep in mind, I use a true 0 to 100 scale, and using the 3D beat 'em up criteria, Zombie Vikings Ragnarok Edition ends up at a 43 out of 100. This is Jiro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching. Zombies, Vikings, gods, or the man, I've beat 'em up 'em all. Subscribe to Umbra Games to catch new videos, or follow me on Twitter @Umbra Games.